The Tender Bar is the first George Clooney directed movie since The Midnight Sky, a movie I said on this channel is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, which gave me a lot of trepidation going into this movie. However, it's fully possible that George Clooney made a good movie. Let's talk about why. A boy growing up in Long Island seeks out a father figure among the patrons at his uncle's bar. Tender Bar is a brand new movie on Amazon Prime Video, as I mentioned, directed by George Clooney, starring Ben Affleck, a few other people in there as well. Christopher Lloyd pops up too. But the interesting thing with this movie is that it's not a conventional story, and I can see a lot of people not liking this movie. I can see this one split in opinion. Some people will love it, some people will hate it, some people will like meh it, if that's the reaction. But for me personally, I did find myself largely enjoying this movie, and then at the end of it kind of going, did I enjoy it? I think so. There's a lot to like about the movie, as I mentioned. It looks pretty good. It's got a unique look to it. The soundtrack is phenomenal. There's some really good acting in it. The characters in it are interesting. The relationship between the young boy and his uncle is very well done, and the struggles he goes through are very realistic. And the reason they're so realistic is that this movie is based on a memoir, a best-selling memoir of a man from 2005. This memoir is from 2005 and the man's not from 2005, that'd be ridiculous. So knowing it's based on real life, which I just found out just before I recorded this video, that kind of elevated the movie for me, in my opinion, because the movie does have a realism to it. This is not a sensationalized story. This is not the story of a global celebrity or one of the biggest singers of all time or someone who achieved something magnificent. This is a real life story of a real boy growing up and the struggles he had growing up. It's kind of in a similar vein to like Boyhood, except not complete shit. You know, because Boyhood was complete shit. Now, at the same time, as I mentioned, I can see a lot of people not liking this movie because it doesn't have an end goal, really. Because at the start of the movie, the kid says, I want to be a writer. And at the end of the movie, the guy's like, I still want to be a writer. I'm going off to be a writer. But they do have some good scenes in it. They have some good lines, some good dialogue, some good interactions with the characters. There is even some good payoffs. There's some real heartfelt moments, some real good emotion throughout the movie. And overall, I just found it to be a very good, enjoyable movie. Don't expect too much from this. Don't expect it to be a blockbuster or one of the best stories you've ever heard. But it is a fairly realistic story in certain aspects. At times you tell the kid to cop on. At times you're like cheering for him. At times you feel bad for him. I just feel like the storytelling within this one was pretty strong, despite the story for a movie not being exceptional. As I mentioned, the kid doesn't really achieve anything spectacular in this movie. He's not going to break a world record or become the first man to go to the moon or anything like that. He's not trying to save the world. He's just living his life. And from that reason, I can see a lot of people not enjoying the movie and, you know, wanting to go see superheroes defend the world or whatever you want to see, gangsters, anything like that. The performances within the movie are one of the things that holds it together. The characters, the relationship between characters, good and bad. You know, we see the hostile relationship he has with his actual father and how that ultimately comes to an end, even when he wants to forgive him. We see the growing relationship between him and his uncle, who takes him under his wing at an early age. The relationship between him and the patrons of the bar, as mentioned in the synopsis at the beginning. And overall, for me, I just felt the film had a really good realism to it in many, many aspects, which was highlighted when I later found out that this is based on a memoir and is actually real events that happened to someone's actual life. And in fact, the actual bar from the movie still exists, just under a different name. Going into this movie, I wasn't expecting much because, as I mentioned, I was not a big fan of The Midnight Sky, and I was just expecting George Clooney to make another terrible movie. I don't think it'll ever go down as a great movie. I don't think it's going to win awards, possible nominations for some of the actors, but I don't think it's going to go down for awards or even be a movie I'll ever watch again. But for a once-off experience, it was a decent little watch. So when it comes down to a rating out of 10 for the Tender Bar, I think I'd give it a 6 out of 10. I've been debating whether it's a 6 or a 7, but for me, I'm going to give it a 6. It was enjoyable, but ultimately not spectacular, but definitely a decent little movie to check out this week. I would say it's one of the best movies of 2022 so far, but there's been like 4 of them, so I guess so far, one of the best movies of 2022, but as I say, slim pickings. And most of the other ones were absolutely terrible.